The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Good evening and welcome to BronxTalk. Tonight, we're going to take a look at next year and visit with two council member elects to get a look at what's going to be new in the city council. In fact, we're going to have a new mayor, we're going to have a new borough president, and we are going to have a largely new city council. We will be joined by the council member elect from the 14th Council District in the second half of our program. But let's start the program and say good evening to council member elect Althea Stevens. Nice to have you with us, council member elect.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
You must be excited. I mean, you work very hard. You've certainly worked in the community long enough, but you've worked very hard to get to this moment. I want to just tell us how you feel about what happened in early November. Of course, we had talked to you after the primary, and tell us how things are going. I guess you're getting a staff together, you're getting an office together. Why don't you give us a little of that before we get into some issues?
Yeah, you know, I'm still very excited and honored that the folks of the 16th district see fit that I represent them at City Hall. And I am excited to do that with integrity and love. And as hard as I ran and worked to get here, is as hard as I'm ready to fight and work for our community and make sure that we get everything that we deserve. So I'm just really excited to represent my community and really stand for all the things that I know that they want me to, and work collaboratively with the community.
That office space that Councilmember Gibson has used, is that going to be your office space, or are you looking at different space, or where are we at?
I'm absolutely staying in that office space. I think it's important for some consistency. I need everyone to be able to find me. That's very important. So for me, I'm definitely going to be staying in that office space for a bit and make sure that everyone knows where I'm at, which is right there on Jerome.
I was going to say, one of the, I know all the council districts. One of the benefits of that particular space is it's centrally located. People get off the subway, they can go right there. Not to mention there's a nice restaurant across the street.
Yeah,
that's another, I'm sure mine too. And putting a staff together, these are people who have worked with you. You're going to maybe take some of her staff. I mean, how do you view that?
So actually, as we all know, Vanessa Gibson is going to be our borough president. So I'm so excited to have her at the helm leading this borough. But she's going to be taking all of her staff, and a lot of my campaign staff will be transitioning over to the government side. So I'm really excited about that. And we have a very young staff, folks who are coming from nonprofit and youth development and communications to really come in and serve our community.
You are passionate about many issues, and so I'm going to just lay it out there. You've worked in the not-for-profit sector in a number of different capacities for very long periods of time. Talk to me about,
because I'm kind of young now.
Well, I would never characterize that. But just talk to me about how that informs what you know about the community and informs the decisions that you will make beginning January 1st, although you said, January 8th is going to be your inauguration.
Yes.
But tell us a little bit about, what you talked about being passionate, what you're really passionate about and what you're going to really look to do.
Well, so I have a background, my background experience is nonprofit and advocacy and youth development. And I'm really excited to really hone in on those skills in a different way in this capacity. I think one of the things our district needs and the Bronx in general needs is quality nonprofit support, right? And so for me, it's looking at how do we have partnerships between local government and nonprofits, because they're really doing the work that we all talk about. And so for me, it's like, how do we make sure that we're funding them adequately? How are we making sure that we have nonprofit leaders at the table so that the services that our community needs, like mental health, youth development, you know, and all those things that we talk about, cure violence, that they are being funded, staffed, and supported and evaluated, and so that we can ensure that we have quality programming in our community. And so that's one of the things that is one of my top priorities, is to really bridge that gap between government and nonprofit.
And I'm going to add another sector, because that district in particular, of course, has the largest business in the Bronx. So the New York Yankees are there. And that means that the 161st Street Business District and other, districts that kind of feed off of Jerome Avenue and River Avenue. Talk to me about the health of those districts, even the shops that have always been threatened down on River Avenue. Talk to me about the health of those districts from a small business perspective, and what, as a council member, you might be able to do to help them survive and even do better.
Well, I think small business is important and essential for our community. So for me, it's making sure that small businesses that have been staples in our community and have stayed here for a number of years, that we support them, right? So how do we make sure that they are getting services, that they're getting support? A lot of our local businesses have families who, don't necessarily speak the language here. How are we making sure they have language access and they have access to grants and loans and things that they need to really survive, right? When the pandemic hit, our small businesses is what was in our community and really saved us. So I think it's important that we continue to provide support for them. And then another thing we also have to think about, what does it look like to develop business leaders who are from our community, so that we can make sure that we continue to grow small business in our community. Another one of the things that I'm really passionate about is getting people who are from our community to start opening businesses and running business, to really show that there's a pipeline of entrepreneurship in our community.
That's a really interesting question, and I've asked our next guest, Pierina Sanchez, about it because of the Kingsbridge Armory and all the street vendors that are out there. Many of the shop owners complain because they say we have all these street vendors, and I know there are those in your neighborhood as well. It would be nice to transition those people so they can own stores too, instead of selling woolen hats, during Christmas time.
That's right.
Can that be done? I mean, is that one of the things you look at?
I think all of those things could exist, right? I think sometimes everyone feels like people have to be at war, but I do think that, one, there are a lot of street vendors in our communities who are really thriving, right? There's a lot of fruit vendors and things like that who bring a lot to our community. So one, we need to think about, like, how do we make sure that businesses are growing in our community? So people who are vendors, what does it look like to help them to become brick and mortars? And is that something that they want? And also another thing that we've been talking about, and I've been talking about with some other community leaders and organizers, is there space in the community where we could have like an open market where vendors can go and actually, be safe,
there you go,
have space, and really have a place where they can go every week and sell their goods. This has been done in other communities, and I think the Bronx is a place that we need to start looking at different models and different approaches.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I'm a big fan of the farmers markets that we've had really all over the Bronx. It sounds like you'd like to see more of that even in your community. I mean, you look at Joyce Kilmer Park. I mean, there's plenty of places to do that.
Well, and not just farmer markets, right? I'm talking about like vendor markets, right?
Really, vendor markets.
Yeah, where there can be a number of things sold.
Absolutely.
And we have space for them to go, and they're organized, and really organizing them, and then, and also helping them, give them services as well.
I'm going to use the word legitimize, so that they're not chased around the neighborhood and all those kinds of things. One of the things that's going to happen, there's no doubt about it, is that the new city council will have many more women as members than ever before. I may have asked you this, when you were running, or when we did shows previously. How is that going to change anything really in the city of New York, or will it not? It just will be that there will be women there. Or do you think there's a different sensibility that will come to play as as people like you, women like you, take office?
Well, me being a woman and coming here, I always believe that women have always been in leadership positions, but it hasn't been in the front, right? So I'm just excited that we have a council who have a lot of women, and I believe that we're coming in with a lot of great ideas. Women typically legislate in a very different way because we look at things in a much more holistic way, because we often think about, not just thinking about the problem, but, because a lot of us are moms and doing multiple things, we kind of look at it like, how do we look at this in a different family dynamic? And so our legislation often just looks different and feels different. So I'm excited to really see what us as city council, the legislation that we're going to bring in and the oversight of our agencies and our communities, what that really looks like. And, we all are about working in partnership. I've been meeting with all of my future colleagues, all of the women. We really, generally just like each other, even the men, because I don't want to leave them out. They've been really well.
Fair enough.
And no, they actually have. And I think that this council, one of the things that we actually do have going for us, we actually really do like each other. We are getting along. And we've had 6 months to really build a bond of supporting and work together, which hasn't really been done or seen before. So I'm just really excited for what's to come for us and how we're really going to be able to work together to get stuff done and move the city in the right direction after this pandemic.
During
this pandemic, because it's still happening.
It's still happening. As somebody who, as interviews all of the candidates and others who are running for office, I can tell you which we had in the state assembly, we had a bit of a turnover in the state legislature, and the same thing is happening now in the city council. For me, I'm a little older, it's very refreshing to see young people taking real leadership positions as opposed to just being an assistant to a council member. I mean, I do think it's a pretty exciting time. Just curious, now we're recording this on Thursday the 9th. Today, the city council, it hasn't happened just yet, but they're expected to vote that non-citizens, not undocumented, but people with green cards and residency permits, et cetera, will be able to vote. Is it fair to ask, you haven't been part of the debate in the council, of course. Did you have an opinion on that? If you were in the council, would you vote yes, no, or you're not sure?
Listen, I think that obviously it's a good bill and I support it. And, I believe that it will empower communities that voices typically aren't heard. However, I also think that we're at a place where we constantly are throwing things on and not really stopping to evaluate where we are. We just had our first round of RCV voting, ranked choice voting in New York City, and it went well in some neighborhoods, and in some neighborhoods it didn't do so well, right? And instead of us now adding a new group of people before we even stop to evaluate how RCV went, it's like we're always just constantly just trying to be first at things. And I really believe that this is a great idea. And I think it's one of those things that we should be moving forward. But I also think because we're piling so much on, it's really hard for us to really get stuff done in a real effective way. And so for me, I'm thinking, is this something that we need to do at this moment? Or is this something that, that could be waited after, we really think about it? Because if you look at districts like mine, our voter turnout is very low. And I think it's important for us to think about how are we engaging and supporting people to actually be civically engaged, right? When I think about this go around, we had 10,000 people come out and vote in my general election. And so what are we doing that we don't have people who are already registered to vote, not voting? How are we evaluating? What does these system looks like? And what does the education piece look like, right? So I think that there's a lot of work to be done, and we have to sometimes just take one moment, stop, evaluate before we move forward, because it's not always about being first or doing things quickly, but really saying, guys, is this working? How do we move forward? And how do we make sure that everybody's included? Because I don't really think that people are going to be included, because what is the education piece going to look like to ensure that these folks who would now be empowered to vote know that they can vote, What does the rollout look like? Like, those are things that I'm more interested in than actually this bill passed.
We're almost out of time, so I'm just so sorry that the start date wasn't December 1st, because it would have been great to have you in the middle of that debate. Sounds like you would have had a lot to say about it, and sounds like something you're looking forward to. You got about 30 seconds. Do you want to just tell us that you're excited, or what your first thing you're going to do when you walk in and say, okay, now I got to get to work? I mean, we got about 30 seconds. Do that.
Well, I am so excited and honored to be in city council and to be in this city council. I think that is something special that we have 31 women walking in on January 1st to represent the city. And I think that this is going to be historical. And I just want to let all of my constituents and anyone here, please know that I'm always going to continue to fight for us and make sure that my district and communities and people who look like us are getting everything that we deserve, and we're no longer going to be shortchanged.
Althea Stevens, we look forward to our continued relationship, so you can come on our program anytime and talk about the big issues. And good luck. And we will see you. We certainly thank you for coming on the program this evening. And we'll take a short break. We'll be right back. And one of your colleagues, Councilmember-elect Pierina Sanchez, will join us in just a moment. Okay, back with you on Bronx Talk, and let's right now go to Councilmember-elect Pierina Sanchez. Nice to have you with us, Councilmember-elect.
Thank you so much, Gary. Happy to be here.
You, of course, are in the 14th Council District. You will be succeeding Fernando Cabrera. That may be just a start. How are you doing? Office set? You're going to use Mr. Cabrera's office. You're going to come up with new things, and your staff. Tell us where you're at.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I mean, the first thing that I will say, because it's in the front of my mind, is if you are a passionate person who loves the Bronx and you like working until your eyes feel red and you can't stop, you should apply to work on to be on the team.
Oh, there you go. So you're actually looking for team members?
I am.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is very, very interesting.
Absolutely. I always, it's funny when you run for office, you get all kinds of questions. Pierina, what are you going to do about this? Can I get an apartment? Are you going to do that? Can you hire me? Are you going to hire our youth? You get so many questions. And so, now I've developed this answer, which I think, drives it home for a lot of folks that, thank you for your support. I didn't get elected to be the emperor of District 14. I got elected to be the city council member. And so that means that there's a lot of limitations, but, excited for building with the new council class, for hiring 3, 4, maybe 5 people to work on the team, having people who really can work with our community, who can push city agencies when the times come, and to be there when I can to serve the community, because that's what I got into this for. So I'm hiring. I'm considering whether I'm going to stay in the same space or not. Just if you see a spot, I'm like an open door, 917-727-4190. If you see a space that you think would be good for a community serving office, let me know. I might find a new space, or I might stay in Cabrera's office. But everything is moving very quickly. So excited. We had our orientation yesterday in the City Hall chambers, and that just really made it real.
It made it real. What do you hear from constituents? Now, I realize you campaigned, that was probably seemed endless to you. But between November 2nd and now, that people, I'm sure they're congratulating you. But what do you hear from residents that they're saying, okay, now you're going to do it. This is what we want you to do.
Absolutely. So I'm hearing much of similar complaints, concerns from the community. Folks are concerned about quality of life. They're concerned about safety in the community. The never-ending, always present, complaint that I get about the community from folks is my heat and hot water are not turned on. We don't have gas. There are issues in my apartment, or I just can't afford it. I can't afford it. And I've been waiting for years and years for affordable housing. So the issues are the same. Folks, I'm not in office just yet.
Right.
I'm very, very excited to work with you on that. And no matter what, if you reach out to me, we'll find a way to get you some assistance, although my office will be set up in January. And that's really what's going to be driving me in my work in the city council with the rest of the colleagues. It's a beautiful thing. A lot of us are starting in this new city council. We have, I think it is 32 to 35 new members, if I'm not mistaken. And all of these new members are coming in with, a lot of good ideas, a lot of passion for their communities, and a lot of passions for making the city of New York a better place.
Just before you came on the program, Althea Stevens said she was also very excited. She felt a sense of unanimity. I mean, everybody's not going to agree, we know that, but a sense of collegiality, if you will, between especially new council members. I guess you feel that too.
Absolutely. Yeah, we had New York Magazine did something in the chambers where, they gathered all the women because we're a historic city council. We're going to be majority women. I'm sure Althea mentioned that, 32 women coming into the city council for the very first time. So they gathered all of the women yesterday for some photos. And, it was powerful to be in chambers, period. It was powerful to think, this is the people's building of New York City. This is the people's house of New York City. And I have a seat in it, or I'm going to have a seat in it. But looking around at that moment, it was like 5 o'clock yesterday, and just seeing 32 women are going to be co-running the city of New York with the mayor-elect Adams. That is something that you can't put into words, right? Because so many people fought for people of color to be in these spaces, and for women to be in these spaces, and for underrepresented people to be in these spaces. And it's almost like, wow, it's finally here.
That is exciting. And I'm going to ask you the same. I may have even asked you this, when we were doing debates and whatever else. What does that mean in terms of policy? It's one thing that, yes, there's no denying that there will be a female majority city council, but how does that change either the tone, the tenor, or actual policy in the city of New York?
Yeah, absolutely. I come from a couple of years working in government. I'm almost a decade. My career after college has been in government. And one thing that I've heard over and over is, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. Right? If you're not there, if you're not at part of the decision-making process, then your considerations and your thoughts are not at the forefront. And so to have a majority woman council and to have such a diversity of experience, because it's not just that we're women, it's that we're social workers and teachers and psychologists and urban planners and all of these different...
let me just interject, because I don't want to run out of time. I've got two big issues I want to talk about. Because the women have been doing other things in many cases, and not to, beat down on my male friends, but many of them were in politics, and that's what they ended up doing. The women were doing other jobs and now have said, well, I'm going to turn that into, my political career. It's almost like a little test case. It was published in the Norwood News, an article from Mbaye, talking about a new application filed with the DOB for a 12-story building in that on that particular block. Here's some of the things that the article says, that the building will comprise 64 residential units, most likely condos, based on the average unit scope of 1,000 square feet. The concrete-based structure will also have a cellar and 16 open parking spaces. And out of the 64 residential units, that means that's 25%. That means there are going to be 46 people without a parking space. They're going to have to find a space. But what are your thoughts about that? And then what do you do when you see that come across your desk?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first part of the response here and the thinking here is, again, what I've heard over and over and over from the community, right? My rent is too high. I've been waiting for years and years and years for an apartment, for an affordable apartment. And these concerns about housing stability and being able to stay in the community for the long term. So the first part of it is, I see a 12-story building application that is not inherently problematic in my view, because we need more affordable housing. We need more housing. That means you're going to see constructions. You're going to see permits filed. Now, that second question is, who is it for, and what kind of housing are we bringing? Who is going to live there? Who's going to have
who's going to buy the condos? I mean, you know, is the economy, the local economy, there to support it, or is it something else? You know, is it being built, for example, for doctors at Montefiore, which we might need also? I don't know.
Right. Well, I would personally love to see more home ownership options in the community. I think it brings a level of stability, and it helps our families to build generational wealth. But that's the second question, right? New York City has an as of right development system, right? That means that most buildings that you see coming up, the New York City Council in the 1960s determined what is allowable and what is not allowable in terms of height and bulk and use, right, of a parcel. We determined that in the 60s. Most things that you see coming up are happening because they're allowed. So this building is happening because the zoning, if I was a betting woman, is R6. That means it's allowed to be there. And so it's only when something is not allowed. So let's say it's 12 stories, but the landlord wants to build 25 stories. That's when it comes to that.
So we'll wait till January 1st and see how you, because I know I've put you on the spot. You haven't had time to really understand this. One thing which has been around for a long time, and you even put yourself on your press photo with the picture of the Kingsbridge Armory behind you. I want to show you what Borough President-elect Vanessa Gibson said about it and get your opinion of her thoughts. So here's what she said in August about the Kingsbridge Armory. What are your thoughts about the Kingsbridge Armory? Is it time to finally push it forward and get it done?
Generally, I've been frustrated as the neighboring council member of D16, respectful of Council Member Fernando Cabrera's leadership in the role of the Community Advisory Board, and all of the work, the long hours in which they gathered and met and talked and consulted to try to come up with the best plan. And I want to respect that process. I want to respect the work that they have done. It's just been frustrating seeing it lie dormant. I know that during the pandemic, it was used for the purposes of distributing food through the military and, and the National Guard. And I respect that. But I think it's time to move forward. Well,
there you go. Council Member-elect, what do you think?
Well said.
Oh, so she said it.
Well said.
You back that. And so, again, you haven't had a chance to really roll up your sleeves, but there's community benefits in there. And you
right.
and I have spoken about it. So you think now is a time with the new mayor and the new council member, new borough president and new council member. This is time. What do you think? Take about 60 seconds, if you would.
To echo very much respecting the process that led us to the community benefits agreements that we had, I see that as the floor. Any new proposal, any new idea has to treat those benefits as the baseline and build from there. So we've heard for years and years what people want. They want a commercial space. They want community facility space. They want good jobs. They want local hire. They want union jobs, right? We want cultural facilities. We want space for the youth, right? So we know what the community wants. What I'd love to see if the National Ice Skating Center is not going to happen, then immediately, as soon as I'm in office, for example, I want to do everything that I can to work with Borough President Gibson, Senator Rivera, also Assemblymember Rivera, and Mayor-elect Adams, Governor Hochul, our federal delegation, to bring the resources together that we need to really catalyze a project here and see it happen.
Councilmember-elect Sanchez, any final words, the things that you want to say? People who are looking to work in government, maybe this is a chance.
Community, my office is going to be the People's Office for District 14. If you are that person or you know someone who is interested in working with us, please do reach out. Apply at pierinasanchez.nyc. If you don't know how to spell my name, hopefully Google will help you. And also you can reach out to us via text message 917-727-4190. Thank you so much.
Great. Pierina Sanchez, council member-elect in the 14th Council District. There's never enough time in the show. There's many more issues, and you'll come back, I'm sure, when you really get your hands dirty, and then we'll really unravel some of these projects. So thank you. And also thanks to Althea Stevens for joining us in the first half of our program. And guess what's going to happen next week? One of the most, not that this show wasn't exciting, but we are going to have Robert Abrams, Adolfo Carrion and Ruben Diaz Jr., 3 former borough presidents, to talk about their legacies and the borough of the Bronx as we move into the administration of a new borough president. So that'll be next week on BronxTalk. Should be exciting. We'll see you then. Happy holidays. Good night.